Hi, everybody. Welcome to podcast number 173. I'm Susan Clinton, one of your hosts for Tough to Treat. This podcast, Erica and I are going to be talking about, we don't really talk about regional stuff, but we're going to talk specifically about a stiff first metatarsal joint and how that really affects the whole body. So hope you enjoy it. Thanks for listening. And don't forget to leave us a review so that we can be found by others. And to be sure to pop into our website, toughtotreat.com, sign up there, take a look at everything that we have. And if you've got a patient that you want to talk about, a short 15-minute conversation with Erica and I, we'd love to invite you onto the episode. So email us at toughtotreat@gmail.com.
Yes, this is
PT, yeah.
Yep, at gmail.com.
PT@gmail.com. Toughtotreatpt@gmail.com. Thank you. Enjoy the episode. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Tough to Treat. I'm Susan Clinton, one of your co-hosts, here with Erica Mello, my lovely co-host.
Hello.
And this is podcast number 173.
Yes.
So thank you for joining us and listening and staying with us on our march up to podcast number 200. We're looking for ideas on how to celebrate. So maybe pop into our email at toughtotreatpt@gmail.com and let us know what your ideas are. Maybe we'll have a party or something.
I know we should. We absolutely should.
You should. We really should. Okay, let's get to it, shall we? So today I thought, instead of talking about a client, lately we've been talking about conglomerations and different things that we see and, ways to work through things. And I thought today would be a good time to talk about something we rarely discuss or have discussed on the podcast, which is a stiff first MTP joint in the foot.
Yes. And how it affects the rest of the body.
Ray, and how it really does mess up things all the way around.
Yeah.
So I thought I would just start off with just kind of us walking through different ways that joint can get stiff. The most obvious way is injury. With, post-injury osteo that can happen. There's also just regular osteoarthritis that could just set up without injury. That's a big joint for that to set up in, like the knee, the hips, and the shoulders, and the hands. And then, there's also the other things that can be part of it. If somebody's got a structural pes planus, like the rigid flat foot, not the soft, supple flat foot, but the rigid flat foot, they usually have a very, very, very stiff first ray as well, and first MTP joint. And then, of course, the people who have the migrating first metatarsals that migrate into adduction, so we end up with the hallux valgus going on. Some people are more prone to that than others. Even shoes can make it worse, obviously, but there are people who can wear really pointy shoes and never have a problem. And there's other people who put them on and it just depends on how lax their joints are. And, they end up with toes crossing and things happening. So that also makes for a stiff joint. And I think there's, other things to consider too. There's rheumatoid arthritis. I think you would know if your client had RA. It certainly wouldn't be the first place that RA would start. If it is as a single joint, though, one of the things to certainly consider in your differentials is that, do they have gout?
Yes, of
because
course.
that's the joint where that occurs. And so if it occurs in isolation like that, sometimes it could be, something, a lot of people say, oh, it's a shoe on the one side and it's this. But, if it's that, we have to kind of consider that it's red, it's hot, it's swollen, extremely painful, not just a stiff toe. Because oftentimes with our clients, we're looking at them and standing and moving and bending over and squatting down and walking and climbing and stepping. You may notice that they just have a stiff toe, and they've always had that stiff toe, and their body has compensated around it. And as we always say, we compensate and adjust until we can't.
Right.
And so they may not even be coming to us. They're not coming to us. So this is the client that isn't going to come to us with a stiff toe. They're not going to come complaining about their stiff toe.
No.
They don't even know they have one. And if they do, they don't care about it. They haven't thought about it. So this is somebody who's going to come complaining about something else.
Yeah.
We're going to see this as, and this is a different type of a driver than just the foot.
Yeah.
As being driver, this is more of like the forefoot being the driver, because something's not happening at the forefoot.
Yeah.
That is actually causing the rear foot to behave a certain way. So all the correction of the rear foot isn't going to do any good, because you'll see that
it could even make it worse.
It may change what goes on. But it'll make everything worse when you try to block the adjustment or the ability to compensate around it.
No,
give me your
no, I'm just looking at, because I have hallux valgus on my right foot, on my right big toe. Not bad. And not so much on my left. I mean, I always, I believe that cramming my feet into very narrow heels when I was on Wall Street was part of it, to be honest. And I load my right side more than my left. But I had a patient some years ago. She had a hallux valgus. I mean, literally, her big toe was like at a 0. It was a 90-degree angle across her toes. I've never seen anything like it. I mean, it was brutal. There was no pain. I was treating her for her back. I said to myself, Erica, there is no way you're going to change this. Okay. Don't even try. But I will tell you that people who have issues in either I'm just going to use the hip as an example, because I did have somebody today who had a hip issue and she wasn't pushing through the big toe. And so if you don't use it, you will lose it. I mean, it's a cliche, but this is true. You don't use the big toe. If you have a rigid foot, your supinated foot, you're pushing out through the middle to lateral border of your foot. You're not going to use it, right? And so if you don't use it, you're going to lose options for mobility at that joint. And that for me is yes, it could be stiff from a systemic issue or a structural issue, but I generally don't see those types of patients.
Right.
I see the ones that it's an adaptation from something else. So when you sort of line the toe up and you what's the word I'm looking at? You test the MTP dorsiflexion extent and plantar flexion. It will be somewhat rigid. However, you'll have people who don't have hallux valgus and they'll have significantly rigid first MTP joints for whatever reason, because they're compensating. But for the I guess the purposes of the podcast, if you have somebody who has a significant quote unquote deformity or a valgus deformity of that first MTP, and they're coming in to see you for something else, I think you need to address it. You're not going to, right?
I 100%, which is why we're going to talk about this today, and why we are talking about it today, because some of the things that I will tell you, I love what you were talking about with the supinated foot. So if you think about it, you can catch these feet when these people are children and teenagers.
Yeah.
Because they're the kids that stand and don't ever put their big toe on the ground. They just stand and that big toe is just up in the air because they're standing on the lateral borders of their feet, their weight bearing through the middle part of their foot. And there's just, the big toe isn't on the ground. And as they get older and they have to move in more intricate ways, then what ends up happening is that first metatarsal head drops towards the ground. So you get that dropped metatarsal, in the forefoot part. And, so they get some bend in that toe. But what happens, is as they move and progress forward, they still move off, right? They don't move over the toe. And so then that, as soon as they put weight, like if they're trying to walk and they put weight through their first ray, it moves the first ray head, the tarsal head up towards the sky or the ceiling. And all of a sudden, when that happens, you lose the range of motion of the toe. The only way that that toe goes into dorsiflexion is if that first ray goes into plantar flexion.
Yes.
So and so for people like this, it becomes a real issue when they're doing things like lunges, and they're doing things like high strides, and and bigger climbs, or they're riding their bike. I've seen people literally ride their bikes on the side of their feet.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Where they're like, they just pull, they just stay in that supination because they can't have the pedal under the first ray and pull and be able to do the flexion of the toes, the dorsiflexion of the toes, to pull the pedal around.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they load laterally so that first ray can drop.
Yeah.
And they have access to dorsiflexion. So I think that's kind of one of the crazy ones that you see. But these are the people who will have the heel whip when they walk, and they'll also have an exaggerated coronal plane gait. So they're going to have that lateral swing, through their hips, because they are staying on the outside of their foot, as you said, So they don't have the medial rotation to come in to, bring them forward. So they have to compensate by swinging laterally, and that of course starts to change everything when we're not doing internal and external rotation of the tibia, femur, through the pelvis and up into the spine.
Yeah, and you almost want to like maintain the pyramid of the foot, you want to keep that pyramid, quote unquote. And I think, you've got the subtalar joint, the talocrural joint, the midfoot, the forefoot. It's all the foot. But as we mentioned earlier, if you decide you're going to treat the rear foot and you find that that's their dysfunction, and you stand them up and their big toe is way off the ground, you've made something in the forefoot worse. You can't let them go home that way. You cannot. You have to go in and treat the forefoot or treat the midfoot, whatever you find in your assessment. But you cannot let them do that, because they're going to come the next time with like, lateral hip pain or knee pain or even foot pain. But when you're looking at the hallux valgus in particular, the forefoot, you want to look at it, I don't want to say in isolation, but you want to look at it also as it's related to the rest of the foot, because based on that, let's say it's a long-standing issue, the midfoot and the subtalar joint will have compensated, and they will compensate into that supinated, rigid foot. I believe that's my issue. It's very interesting. I also have a neuroma on that foot. Okay. And I don't know if there's a correlation between hallux valgus and neuroma.
Because you're squeezing your third and fourth metatarsal heads together, and
you think, right?
It's in that little nerve,
yeah. And I bet you there is a high correlation, because that's what I happened for years. I would be skiing and I would have my foot in the ski boot, and this is when I was not a physical therapist at the time, and I would get off the middle of the ski in the run, take the boot off because my forefoot was killing me, a burning pain. And then years later, I was like, as I had my foot MRI'd for some old ankle sprain that I had that kept cropping up. And it turns out I actually have a neuroma. And I was like, well, that explains it. And, so when I get into like, you're speaking of bicycling, cyclists, when I was spinning a Soul Cycle here, I'll get into the really tight shoe.
Right, the clips.
I'll clip in. And I would say 50% of the time, I have to take my that right foot out, because it is burning, and I've spun with one foot in the shoe and one foot out, because because you can't compensate. Your big toe has to go down. Right.
And that's why I was saying it's interesting, because most people don't think about cycling, but you're really loading that lateral part of the foot, like metatarsal head 3 through 5, and on the pedal. And the only way to do that is to make your knee go out.
Yes.
So you have, if you go out on the side of your foot a bit, your knee is going to go into abduction. And now you're, then you're bent over, and which is going to go? Who knows? Is it the pelvis? Is it the lumbar pelvic spine? Is it the hip? Does it affect the thorax and create a thoracic driver on the other end because you're compensating because one leg
Yes.
is going out?
Mm-hmm.
Does it give you head and neck issues? I mean, it can go anywhere, you know, if you think about somebody cycling. And it's great that you brought up about the spinning, because serious cyclers and spinners use clips,
Yes,
and
they do.
takes away their takes away their adaptation. And
Yes.
the ski boot took away your adaptation.
Mm-hmm. Did. That's right.
So, and so you really do have to like look at the whole complex,
Yeah.
because you got to figure out where in the midfoot you can actually work on that twist
Mm-hmm.
that's
Mm-hmm.
in the foot.
Yeah.
That's part of the driver there. So it's the stiffness that they have, or the whatever, the lack of bend, or if they have to plantar flex or first ray to get the toe bend, whatever it may be, we have to figure out how to solve the problem a little bit further up the foot.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. No, I was just going to say exactly. And so if you find from your assessment that the foot in this hallux valgus, the forefoot, or, it's the driver. Let's say the foot's the driver, just the general foot. You have to, this is what I do anyway. I have them in dangling and sitting on the edge of the table or the plinth. And I put their rear foot in neutral, and I look at it in an open chain, in dangling, and I'll look at it in like a squat or something. That I'll do a squat and heel raise, then I'll get them on the table in open chain. And a lot of times what you see in a closed chain, especially in the rear foot, is the opposite of what you'll see in an open chain.
Yep.
So I assess the rear foot, the subtalar joint, the four planes, posterior medial, posterior lateral, anterior medial, anterior lateral in sitting. And I'll assess that in plantar flexion and dorsiflexion. And then I'll have them go supine, and I'll check the talocrural joint as well in dangling, in sitting. Then I'll have them go in supine, I'll have them go prone, and I'll have them go hook lying. So I assess the foot in 4 positions, because in supine you can get a general idea of the rear foot and just how it's laying there, and also the talocrural. But when I go in prone, I have their feet off, like a little bit of hanging off the table. So I can dorsiflex and plantar flex off the table, and I'll put their talus in neutral, and I'll assess the navicular, the talonavicular joint, the calcaneal cuboid joint. And then I'll go up the foot, up to the midfoot and forefoot. And then in hook lying, I also look at that ability of that first ray to go. So I do it 4 ways. Because you want to be able to assess that big toe. You want to be able to assess the forefoot, because you will make it worse if you do something to the rear foot.
Right. And the most interesting thing about that, and about discussing that assessment, especially in prone for me, is being able to really get an idea of the calcaneal, cuboid navicular joint. Because the cuboid is going to be in these people with these toes like we're talking about.
Yeah.
It's like these are people that are kind of your chronic ankle sprainers, right? Because they're always on the lateral border of their foot.
Yes.
So what makes it worse? The ankle sprain is making it worse, or did this cause them to be off balance because they're on the side of their foot more, and so therefore they're a little bit more vulnerable?
Yes.
Because that supinated foot also likes to be in plantar flexion a bit more than it likes to be in dorsiflexion, because dorsiflexion of the ankle goes along with plantar, with pronation of the foot.
Yeah.
And so when a foot's stuck in supination of that midfoot twist, it doesn't tend to dorsiflex at the ankle either. So now you've got a lot of reason for that swing out and being on the lateral border. But oftentimes what you find with the cuboid is that the bottom of the lateral edge of the cuboid is being pulled medially. Yeah. And it's being pulled medially by the peroneus longus.
Yeah. Yeah. My clinical term, I always tell the patient, it's a little sucked up.
Yep.
It's, you don't like to work, your cuboid is compressed. It's like, it's just a little sucked up, and I agree with you. I mean, I think that, the talonavicular, calcaneal cuboid, and all the medial cuneiforms, even that midfoot arch, they can be overlooked by therapists. They don't assess the foot with the level of specificity that I believe is necessary. That's my opinion. Because you wouldn't be doing this level of specificity if you didn't think the foot was the driver. If you think the pelvis is the driver, you would not be doing this level of assessment at all.
Right.
Unless, at all. So
you probably wouldn't have seen this.
No, exactly.
No, but that doesn't mean that people treat the pelvis because it's painful. And it's like the source may, but the driver is very far outside of the pelvis in this instance,
Yes. Yes.
or in the hip, or in the knee, or in the groin area, or even pelvic floor, or left side, lumbar, or whatever it may be, that causes you to develop a secondary driver, which could be usually, in my opinion, up in the thorax somewhere,
Yeah.
because they're
Yeah.
having to off shift balance because they're up on the side of their foot.
Yeah. And I will tell you that I had a patient earlier today, and a longstanding patient, I've known her on and off. So she came back to see me for something. And it was, her hip, and her thorax was her primary driver in the past. And, her foot was a strong secondary. And so what I did was, I determined those were her drivers. Basically, her foot was they're probably both co-drivers. But my point is that because the foot was a driver, and in the past, she had done a lot of upright activities, and she didn't have a hallux valgus per se, but she wasn't pushing through her big toe. Okay. She was going, it was basically step forward with the left foot and then push off that right back foot. And she was going into that plantar flexion inversion pattern that we see a lot of. So when I corrected that, and she moved better. So my point is that when you have that pattern and you see the patient, if they have a foot that's a driver, and you need to put them into like an exercise program, you are not going to start in an upright, I won't anyway, in an upright, hard activity in standing and closed chain, because the foot's not been treated and they're going to resort to their old pattern. And so I said to her, I said, I'm not, her thorax is one of her drivers. At this point, she was beyond like basic raises, but I put her back on the table and I said, I had her do some rotational stuff. I said, we're putting you here because I'm limited as to what I can do in upright, and because of the foot, and so you could say because of the foot, because of the hallux valgus, because of whatever. So the listeners, if you have patients like this who you think that maybe it's a hallux valgus, or they're not pushing through that first MTP, you're going to be really limited as to what you can do in upright unless that gets treated or addressed. Right?
Exactly. And the place to address it may not always be the joint.
Right. That's true.
The place to address it is the midfoot, in my opinion, to get started with. If you could get the midfoot moving better, then oftentimes then see what happens to that. See what happens. It's almost like evaluate and treat. So you treat the midfoot. You start at the rear foot because that tells you what's happening at the midfoot and the forefoot. But it's the midfoot you go after. And see if you can treat that and get that moving better, particularly the cuboid navicular, because it's like the arch is more acute, that angle. And to get that moving better, and to work on some length tensioning of the perineals so that they're not constantly pulling. I see a lot of perineal over recruitment in these people. So getting that to change a little bit, and then helping them, kind of begin to, change how they stand. Can you stand and put a little more weight here? And can you can you get that toe off the ground a little bit? You don't have to yank on their toe, but they can start to work, and they can feel themselves. The minute they try to get that toe up, they start to come off of their, they go over to the side of their foot. Can you do, like you said, establish that tripod? Can you keep the big toe down, the big toe head, the little toe head, and the heel on the ground? And can you move your toes without tightening your quads or pulling with your hip, or doing maybe that huge adjustment in the thorax, so that they can begin to make changes with that? These people also, one of the best things I love to do with this is like when we talk about tucking the foot under when you have a foot driver. So if you've got somebody in quadruped and you tuck the foot under so that their toes are curled up underneath them, and they, to control this, it's a wonderful exercise for them because it really exposes what they can and can't do. But it keeps them honest because the toes are all pulled there. They can actually access toe dorsiflexion because that first raise allowed to plantar flex in that position. But it also keeps it from moving out to the lateral border when they're doing things. So that, where those partial lunges come in really nice, like step out, partially lunge, got to keep the big toe on the ground.
Yes.
don't let the leg go out to the side, so that's where the
Mm-hmm.
thorax piece comes in, maybe with the hands on the wall or the hands
Mm-hmm.
on, two sticks or a chair on either
Mm-hmm.
side to really,
Yep.
begin to, be able to go, have them be able to work to get all the way down to half kneeling and back up,
Yeah. You know what is a good,
controlling that.
yes, no, sorry, Susan, sorry to interrupt. You
That's
know
all
what a
right.
good one
No.
is? I have a patient who's really, really is great with TheraBand. And what she did was she had one of the long purple Franklin TheraBands. So she's
Mhm.
in let's say she's in her left split squat. Okay. So she's got her right foot behind her and and so the foot is on the TheraBand. So she's gripping it. She's got both ends of the TheraBand in front of her. She puts the right foot on the TheraBand and she's pulling the TheraBand towards her, working on her thorax, but she's getting the proprioception of the TheraBand under that right foot, going into plantar flexion, as she goes into that split squat and even so she's going into a split squat with plantar flexion and then a split squat in with dorsiflexion. So she's getting that proprioception with the foot, getting that big toe down and getting that proper plantar flexion and that heel raise that she needs. And she's working her thorax in the same, more neutral, but with that long Franklin TheraBand. I love that TheraBand. There's so many great uses for that.
Mhm.
But you put that under her right foot to give herself more proprioception, basically.
Yeah, just to have something under there that she can control as
Yeah.
she's doing it.
Yeah.
So then the final thing is shoe fit. And
Mm,
a lot of these people wear I mean, I see this often anyway. Everybody's shoes don't fit. They're too short. And here's the thing, the tennis shoes, if you want athletic shoes, I don't even know what we call them anymore.
yeah.
Sports shoes.
Yeah.
They're designed, if you take the shoe and you bend the toe up, the forefoot of the shoe
Hmm.
up, you're gonna see where the natural break in the shoe is. That is where your first MTP joint should be sitting.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And
Yeah.
if your shoe is too short, which it mostly is, people toes are right at the end of their shoe. The shoe is bending where it's not supposed to. I mean, they can't get. They're not. The alignment isn't there for the foot, and most of the time it's a shoe that's too short.
Yeah.
And I see that a lot,
Yeah.
which is a problem. So that's the other thing is I spend time with them, and it's like, let's be sure bring your athletic shoes and the shoes you exercise in.
Hmm.
In New York City, it would be bring the shoes you walk in, for
Yeah.
goodness sakes, because I know people are walking so much there. But let's see what those shoes look like and where the natural bend is, and is it actually happening where your foot is? If
Yeah.
we can
Yeah.
get the house around the foot better, they're going to be able to change a little bit more, not have to hang out on the outside of their foot quite so much.
Yeah. Years ago, I had a patient who had scleroderma. She literally did not have, I mean, she had a fused, she had no mobility at her first ray
Mhm.
and her first MTP. And this is before Hokas and everything. And I actually asked her she wanted to go in a rocker bottom and she was not safe. And so I
Uh-huh.
was like, don't wear them. And I worked with her to wear them because she had none. She was getting back pain because she was foot flatting. So we worked into those shoes with her. And I have
Yeah.
not recommended anything since like that because I'm not a big fan of those sort of rocker bottom shoes at all. I don't particularly like Hokas either, but that's my personal preference. So,
Mhm.
people say, what shoes do you recommend? I don't.
Yeah.
I
I guess
don't.
I recommend bring them in and let's play with them. This is what I
Yes,
want your shoe to do. Go find it.
exactly.
For people like that though, because I did this a lot with a lot of clients, especially back in my days in New Orleans. Um, my go-to shoe for those people were Dance Goes because they
Oh,
had a little bit of enough of a rocker and they were
uh,
solid enough that they could move. The people with
yeah,
very soft, pliable feet did not do good in those shoes. They just did not.
yeah,
But the people
yeah,
like this that we're talking about, that was a shoe that they could wear. And it was like, look, they've got cute, looks like a little sandal, and it looks like this. I mean, it didn't have to look like the big clunky original Dance Goes used to look.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
mhm.
Yeah, no, that's funny. I'm having a
It's like
deja
a
vu.
modified rocker bottom, but I know exactly
Yes.
what you're talking about
Yeah.
because we put diabetic feet all the time in the rocker bottoms with the
Yes.
bigger with a bigger base, and
Yeah,
the
yeah,
deeper shoe so that they
yeah,
could accommodate. But
yeah,
you have to be careful because they have terrible balance, like you said. And,
yeah.
again,
That's it.
safety was priority. And it's like we had to work a lot with people. That was, like, don't come to therapy without your shoes
I
because we
mean,
got to wear those shoes. This is what we have to work on because you don't have balance in these shoes. And this is what you need to
no.
be wearing.
And even to this day, my personal situation with my feet, I wear Uggs in the winter. This is like if I was
Mhm.
a pay, I wear Uggs in the winter. If I came in and said that I have two shoes I wear Uggs in the winter and fit flops, the fit flops, not flip flops, fit flops with an open toe in the summer. Those are my shoes because I need a wide toe box. I don't need anything on my toes. My feet are they're my drivers. They're one of my drivers in
Mhm.
my whole issues that I have. But to this day, I still have issues with buying shoes, and I would be a perfect patient for something like that because I have returned shoes. Recently, I was in Europe and I brought these sneakers I've used for years because they had given the toe box. I had purchased a pair before I walked home here one time in the city. They felt great when I walked. I walked again and my feet were burning. My neuroma was killing me. It was
Yeah.
killing me. So people who are your patients, they're going to ask you for shoe recommendations. And I just don't give them because of that reason, because
Mhm.
everybody's different and I make them bring their shoes and I make them, I look at them and I think it's a good way to, how you suggested, just, sort of, go into the shoe, and I'm doing this with my hand, bend the forefoot and see where it bends at, analyze it a bit. Because
Mhm.
in New York, you are right. Everybody wear sneakers here. I mean, not, I mean, I don't, I wear flip flops, but most of the people come in to see me, they're coming in sneakers,
Mhm.
and I do think it's important to assess it. Even with or without an orthotic, that's a whole nother podcast episode. But I think that just, shoes are very personal and,
Yeah.
they really are. And you have to literally walk in them. And I think the mistake that I made years ago was not buying 4 pairs of the same shoe
Mhm.
because they,
So the other thing that works really well is buy shoes that you can return. And a
yeah.
lot of people will say, I can't return these shoes to the department store. So my thing is that it depends upon what your thing is, right? If you're going to be wearing dress shoes, then perhaps you need to find a pair of tennies to wear until you
Mhm.
can walk in the front door and take them off and put your dress shoes on.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
the oldest trick in the book that females know is like, what do you wear to a wedding? I always wear
Yes.
these shoes and I always have I have a cute
I,
bag that both shoes fit
yep,
in.
yep.
It's the way it is. But the other though, there's stores out there that will accommodate this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And REI is one of them. And
yeah.
I absolutely love them for that because they will take back a pair of shoes if you've worn them for a year. They don't care, no
Oh, they
question.
will?
Absolutely.
I didn't know that.
Every year they have a big thing called their scratch and dent sale, and
Mhm.
they sell because that was always my big thing is, you go into a store, you buy a pair of hiking boots, you don't have any idea how they're going to perform on the trail until you're in them
Yeah,
and on them.
yeah,
And,
for sure.
and your feet swell and, or maybe they're not the right pliability for the trail that you're on, you just don't know.
Yeah.
But they sell all kinds of shoes. They sell shoes that, like you say, like fit, fit flops instead of, flop flops.
Mhm.
They sell all different
Yeah.
ones and they'll take them back. No
Oh,
questions asked,
I didn't know that.
So there's places. So I think LL Bean will do the same.
Mhm.
There's places out there. So I kind of just encourage people, like, if you've got like these issues, you definitely need to have a lot of opportunity to wear them in the house to be sure, all day standing at the kitchen, doing everything
Mhm.
as much as you can so that or find a place where you can return.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
If you go outside and especially if they're active shoes. And
yeah,
a lot of
yeah,
what we're talking about is like, when people are getting active, most people can get away with shoes if they're just not doing a lot. But, it's the walking, it's the climbing stairs, it's the going to the exercise clubs, it's, doing
yeah,
the movement part where that comes in and becomes a problem. So,
yeah, yeah. And the runners that I
all right.
have, no, I'm just gonna say the runners that I have their shoes down pat. They don't need any advice.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they're good to go. Well, this is
Yeah.
good. Thank you, Susan.
Yes, thank you. And so thank you, everybody. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this. We kind of went around the mulberry bush a little bit there, but I think we got you back to where you've got some ideas about what to do with people that you run into. The biggest thing is don't ignore it. Figure out a way to work with them.
Yes.
Because they're coming to you because the adaptations they have made in their body are no longer working for them because of other issues that they're having. So find a way to, don't ignore this driver, find a way to work with it. But again, look at the whole foot, not just at the regional big toe joint.
Agreed. Yep.
And see what you can figure out and problem solve. This is where you can get fun and creative with a lot of different things with them, and just see what you can create and what will work with them.
Yep.
So,
absolutely. Yep. And
so
as I said,
go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, as you said, just look at the whole foot, but just don't look at the rear foot is basically the motivation, the motto here.
Yeah, look at all of it.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, everybody. You can find us at toughtotreat.com. If you want to email us, that's toughtotreatpt@gmail.com. And feel free to get in touch with us and let us know if you want to. We're opening up our next segments by having some people come on and bring their tough to treat clients.
We'd love to have you.
20-minute talk with myself and Erica.
Yeah.
So
be great.
You got to email us, and you got to be on our list to know when we're doing it. So
exactly.
toughtotreatpt@gmail.com, and we will see you on the next podcast. Thank you.
Thank you.